Today I'm going to read you the story of Aurora, which is titled like this. Immediately after I paid off my house, my brother's wife declared it family property and tried to move in with 2 kids. "We're going to live here," she said, and my family agreed. So I said a few words that made her cry. "Well, let's go." My name is Aurora, and I'm 34 years old. I'm just a regular woman who loves getting her hands dirty in the soil. I've been obsessed with gardening since I was a little kid. While other girls were playing with dolls, I was outside digging holes in my mom's backyard, trying to plant everything I could get my hands on. My parents thought it was just a phase, but it never went away. When I turned 18, I knew exactly what I wanted to study. I went to college for landscaping and horticulture. My parents weren't thrilled about it. They kept asking me if I was sure I didn't want to be a teacher or a nurse like other girls. But I stuck with it. I loved every single class, even the boring ones about soil composition and plant diseases. After graduation, I worked for other landscaping companies for a few years. I learned a lot, but I always felt like I could do things better. My bosses were nice enough, but they didn't have the same passion I had. They'd rush through jobs, use cheap plants, cut corners wherever they could. It drove me crazy. When I turned 25, I decided to take the plunge. I used every penny of my savings to start my own landscaping company. It was terrifying. I had no idea if anyone would hire me, especially since I was young and female in a business dominated by older men. But I figured I had nothing to lose. The first year was brutal. I barely made enough money to pay for gas and basic supplies. I did everything myself: marketing, bookkeeping, all the physical labor. My hands were constantly covered in cuts and calluses. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning and work until dark, 7 days a week. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. But slowly, things started to turn around. My first few customers were really happy with my work, and they started recommending me to their friends. Word of mouth is everything in this business. I wasn't the cheapest option, but I did quality work and I actually listened to what people wanted instead of just doing whatever was easiest for me. By the time I was 28, my business was doing well enough that I could afford to hire a part-time assistant. I was making decent money, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt stable. That's when I started thinking about buying a house. I'd been renting a tiny apartment since college, and I was sick of it. I wanted my own space, my own garden where I could experiment with different plants and designs. I spent months looking at houses, but everything decent was way out of my budget. Real estate prices were crazy, and I was just one person with a small business. Finally, I found it, a small house on the edge of town with a decent-sized backyard. The house itself needed some work, but the bones were good, and the garden had so much potential. The previous owners had let everything go to hell: weeds everywhere, dead shrubs, a lawn that looked like a dirt patch. But I could see what it could become. The mortgage payment was going to be tight, but I figured I could make it work if I kept growing my business. I put in an offer, held my breath for 3 days, and then got the call that they'd accepted it. I literally jumped up and down in my apartment like a little kid. Moving day was one of the happiest days of my life. It wasn't much, just a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom and a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the 80s. But it was mine. Well, mine and the bank's, but still. I immediately started working on the garden. Every spare minute I had, I was out there pulling weeds, planting new flowers, designing little pathways and seating areas. It became my obsession. I'd work all day on client jobs, then come home and work on my own yard until I couldn't see anymore. The transformation was incredible. Within 2 years, I'd turned that dead patch of land into something beautiful. I had different sections: a vegetable garden, a flower garden with plants that bloomed at different times so there was always color, a little herb section near the kitchen window, even a small pond with fish. One day, I was flipping through a gardening magazine and saw they were having a contest for small landscape design. On a whim, I took some photos of my garden and submitted them. I didn't think I had any chance of winning. I figured the competition would be full of professional designers with huge budgets and fancy equipment. 3 months later, I got a call that made me scream out loud. I'd won first place in the small landscape design category. They wanted to feature my garden in the magazine and interview me about my design process. I couldn't believe it. My little garden was going to be in a real magazine that people all over the country would see. But even with this success, I never lost sight of my main goal, paying off that mortgage as quickly as possible. Every extra dollar I made went straight to the principal. I didn't take vacations, didn't buy new clothes unless I absolutely had to, drove the same beat-up truck I'd had since college. My friends thought I was crazy for living so cheaply when my business was doing well, but I had a plan. I worked 60-hour weeks, took on every job I could handle, and put every spare penny toward that mortgage. It wasn't easy. There were times I felt like I was missing out on life, watching my friends go on trips and buy nice things while I ate ramen noodles and patched holes in my work clothes. But every time I got discouraged, I'd walk through my garden and remember why I was doing this. This was my dream, my future, my security. Now, at 34, I'm finally here. The house is mine, completely and totally. No bank owns any piece of it anymore. It's the most amazing feeling in the world. I knew I had to celebrate this milestone with my family. My older brother Marcus was 37 and married to Sarah for 10 years now, with 2 kids, Jake who's 11 and Tommy who's 7. They lived in a cramped rental apartment and were always struggling with money. I'd been helping them by paying their rent for the past 3 years, and on my rare days off, I'd often have Jake and Tommy over at my place. They loved playing in my garden, even though they were more trouble than help sometimes. Sarah would drop them off and immediately start commenting on my house. "Must be nice to have all this space," she'd say, looking around my living room. "The boys could really use a yard like this to run around in." I'd just smile and change the subject, but her comments always stuck with me. A week after I made my final mortgage payment, I bought an expensive chocolate cake and a good bottle of wine. Saturday evening was perfect timing since my parents always had Marcus and his family over for dinner. I could announce my news to everyone at once. When I walked into my parents' house, Jake and Tommy were already playing video games on the TV. I put the cake and wine on the table, feeling excited about sharing my news. "What's the treat for?" my mom asked. "I have a surprise for everyone," I said proudly. My mom waved her hand. "Everyone needs to eat first." We sat down to dinner, and throughout the meal, Sarah kept complaining about their landlord raising the rent and how cramped their apartment was. My parents nodded along sympathetically. Finally, I managed to get everyone's attention. "My news is that I finally paid off the mortgage on my house. It's completely mine now." The entire table went dead silent. You could hear the kids' video game beeping in the living room, but nobody at the table said a word for what felt like forever. My mom was the first to speak. "Oh, well, that's nice, honey." But her voice sounded flat, like she was reading from a script. Marcus just grunted and kept eating. Sarah's face went through about 10 different expressions in 5 seconds. First surprise, then something that might have been anger, then fake happiness, then back to anger. "Well, congratulations," Sarah finally said, but it was obvious she wasn't happy. "But honestly, it doesn't seem fair. You don't have a husband and children like we do. You're lucky you could get your own house while we're stuck in a rental apartment with kids." I tried to stay calm. Actually, I wasn't lucky at all. I worked incredibly hard to build my company, buy this house, and pay off the mortgage. I sacrificed everything for 9 years. Sarah suddenly threw her fork on the table with a loud clang. "Your family, Aurora. That means your house is family property. Marcus and I can claim that house." I was shocked by such twisted logic and pure arrogance. "It's my personal property, no one else has anything to do with my house." But Sarah wouldn't let up. She started sobbing dramatically and turned to Marcus. "Your sister is being so selfish. We need to think about our children. Jake and Tommy need to grow up in a house with a yard, not in this cramped apartment." Marcus nodded his head. "She has a point, Aurora." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I turned to my parents, expecting them to defend me and set everyone straight. But my dad spoke up, "Sarah's right, honey. They need the house more than you do." My mom nodded in agreement, "You have to think about the children." I laughed incredulously, "Where exactly do you think I should live?" "We'll move into your house," Sarah said matter-of-factly, "and you can rent an apartment or something." Marcus jumped in, "You earn good money, Aurora. You have a high income. You'll be able to buy a new house quickly." Then the three of them, Marcus, Sarah, and my parents, started talking among themselves like I wasn't even there. They began discussing how wonderful it would be when Marcus and his family moved into my house. They talked about which room would be Jake's, how Sarah could finally have a proper kitchen, how great the garden would be for the kids. "The living room is so much bigger than what we have now," Sarah said excitedly. "And that garden Aurora built, the kids would love it," my mom added. I sat there listening to them plan out their takeover of my life, my home, everything I'd worked for. They were dividing up my house like I was dead, and they were reading my will. I couldn't take another second of it. I slammed my hand on the table so hard that the plates jumped. "I am not giving my house to anyone." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "It's my property, my hard work, my sacrifice. This has nothing to do with any of you." Everyone stared at me like I was the crazy one. Like I was being unreasonable for not wanting to hand over my home to them. I grabbed my purse and the wine bottle I'd brought. "I can't believe you people." "Aurora, sit down," my dad said sternly, "we're just trying to do what's best for the family." "What's best for the family?" I repeated. "What about what's best for me? What about the fact that I worked myself to the bone for this?" Sarah was still crying, "Think about Jake and Tommy. They're your nephews." "I've been thinking about them for 3 years while I paid your rent," I shot back. I headed for the door, but I could hear them continuing their conversation behind me like nothing had happened. "She'll come around," I heard my mom say, "she just needs time to think about it." "The house really would be perfect for us," Sarah said, her tears magically gone. I walked out and slammed the door behind me. As I got in my car, my hands were shaking with anger and disbelief. These people, my own family, had just tried to steal my house from me. They'd turned what should have been the happiest day of my life into a nightmare. The drive home felt like a blur. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to figure out how it had gone so wrong so fast. How could my own parents think it was okay for me to just hand over my house? How could Marcus sit there and nod along while his wife demanded my property? As soon as I got home, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Call after call from my family. I ignored every single one. Then the text messages started flooding in. I didn't want to read them, but I couldn't help myself from checking when I got inside my house. From my mom, "Aurora, you're being very selfish. Family comes first, call me back." From my dad, "Your mother is upset, you need to apologize and do the right thing." From Marcus, "Stop acting like a child, we need to talk about this reasonably." From Sarah, "I can't believe you would put your own wants above your nephew's needs, shame on you." I deleted every message without responding. I thought surely after a few days they'd realize how crazy they were being and apologize. But I was wrong. For 2 weeks, the calls and messages kept coming. Each one made me angrier than the last. The funny thing was, for the first time in years, I had a completely peaceful weekend. Sarah didn't bring Jake and Tommy over like she usually did. Honestly, I was relieved. I could finally relax in my own house without worrying about kids tracking mud through my clean floors or accidentally breaking something. But my peace didn't last long. On Tuesday afternoon, I was in my office going over estimates for upcoming jobs when my secretary knocked on my door. "Aurora, your mother is here to see you." My heart sank. I should have known she wouldn't give up that easily. Send her in, I guess. My mom walked into my office wearing her sweetest smile, the one she used when she wanted something. She sat down in the chair across from my desk and folded her hands in her lap. "I wanted to talk to you about the house situation. I think you're being a little hasty in your decision." "Hasty?" Mom, it's my house, I bought it, I paid for it, I live in it. There's no decision to make. But Aurora, think about Marcus and Sarah. They really need this. You've been so successful with your business. She gestured around my office, look at all this. You could easily afford to buy another house. I stared at her in disbelief. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for this? I didn't go on vacation for 9 years. I drove the same beat-up truck, wore the same old clothes, ate ramen noodles for dinner so I could put every penny toward that mortgage. I know, sweetheart, but you're in a much better position than Marcus and Sarah. They have children to think about. And what about me? What about what I want? What about the fact that I love my house and my garden? My mom's face got that stubborn look I remembered from childhood. Aurora, you're being selfish. Family should help family. You should be generous because you've achieved so much. That word, selfish, they kept using it like it was some kind of weapon. Like wanting to keep the thing I'd worked my entire adult life for made me a terrible person. Mom, I need you to leave. I stood up and walked to my office door. You should be ashamed of yourself for playing favorites with your children like this. She gathered her purse and stood up, her face red with anger. You're making a big mistake, young lady. This family won't forget how you've acted. Good, maybe then you'll leave me alone. She stormed out, and I could hear her heels clicking angrily down the hallway. A week later, my phone started ringing with calls from relatives I barely talked to. My Aunt Carol from 2 states over, my cousin Mike who I hadn't seen in 5 years, even my great-uncle Henry who I'd only met at weddings and funerals. Aurora, honey, your mother called me, Aunt Carol said. She's very worried about you. She says you're not being very nice to your brother and his family. Did she tell you they want me to give them my house? There was a pause. Well, she mentioned that they need more space for the children. Would you give your house to someone else, Aunt Carol? Another pause. Well, that's different. That's not the same situation at all. How is it different? She couldn't answer that question. None of them could. Cousin Mike hung up on me when I asked him the same thing. Great-uncle Henry mumbled something about needing to go and ended the call. It was clear my mother had been calling everyone we were related to, spinning some story about how I was being cruel and selfish. She was trying to turn the whole family against me. The manipulation was unbelievable. 2 more weeks passed. I thought maybe they'd finally given up when the calls stopped coming. I was actually starting to feel normal again, focusing on my work and enjoying my house in peace. Then Saturday morning happened. I woke up to the sound of loud voices and truck engines outside my bedroom window. At first I thought maybe one of my neighbors was moving. But the voices kept getting closer and louder. I threw on a robe and walked outside to see what was going on. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a moving truck parked in my driveway. 2 guys in work clothes were unloading furniture and boxes. And standing in my front yard like she owned the place was Sarah, pointing at my house and giving the movers directions. The couch goes in the living room, obviously, she was saying. And be careful with those boxes, they have the kids' toys in them. Marcus was there too, along with Jake and Tommy. The boys looked confused and a little scared, but Marcus was just standing there with his arms crossed like this was perfectly normal. I marched over to Sarah, my heart pounding with rage. What the hell is going on here? She turned to me with this fake innocent expression. Oh, Aurora, we're moving in. I hope you don't mind that we started early. Moving in? Are you completely insane? Marcus walked over, trying to look calm and reasonable. Aurora, don't make a scene. We talked about this. Just let us bring our stuff in, and we can work out the details later. We didn't talk about anything. I told you no, this is my house. Sarah stepped closer to me, and I could see the manipulation in her eyes. Aurora, we terminated our lease. We have nowhere else to go. She called the boys over. Jake, Tommy, come here. The kids walked over, looking uncomfortable. Aurora, Sarah said in a loud, dramatic voice, surely you wouldn't dare kick your own nephews out into the street, would you? I looked at Jake and Tommy, then back at Sarah. She had this smug smile on her face, thinking she'd cornered me. But she'd made one big mistake, she'd underestimated me. I turned to the movers and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Excuse me, gentlemen. You're on private property without permission. This is illegal trespassing. If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling the police and you'll all be taken to the station." The movers stopped dead in their tracks. One of them looked at Marcus. "Hey man, you said this was your sister's place and she was okay with it." "She is okay with it," Marcus said quickly. "Aurora, stop being dramatic." "I am not okay with it," I shouted. "This is my house and you have no right to be here." The movers looked at each other nervously. They'd obviously been in situations like this before. Without another word, they started loading the furniture back onto the truck. "No, wait," Sarah screamed at them, "don't listen to her. We paid you to move our stuff." But the movers weren't stupid. They could see this was a family dispute and they wanted no part of it. Within minutes, they had everything back on the truck. Sarah was furious, she started yelling at me, calling me selfish and heartless. Marcus tried to grab my arm. "Aurora, be reasonable, we're your family." I pulled away from him. "Get off my property, now." Sarah wasn't done, she marched up to my front door and started kicking it, screaming about how unfair I was being. "I'm calling the police right now," I said, pulling out my phone. "You have 30 seconds to get off my property." That finally got through to them. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm and dragged her away from my door. They loaded the kids into their car and drove off, Sarah still yelling out the window at me. Half an hour later, my phone started ringing. My parents, of course. I didn't answer. They left angry voicemails, but I deleted them without listening. That evening, I got a text from Marcus. "You owe us money for a new apartment. Because of you we have nowhere to live." I actually laughed out loud when I read it. I texted back, "From today on, I won't help you with anything. Not 1 cent, figure it out yourself." More angry messages came flooding in, but I deleted every single one without reading them. A couple weeks passed peacefully. I was working on a big landscaping project for a new shopping center when I came home one evening and saw something that made my heart stop. My beautiful garden had been destroyed. Plants were ripped out of the ground, flowers were trampled, my carefully designed pathways were torn up. Someone had taken a shovel or something and just destroyed everything I'd worked so hard to create. I almost cried looking at the damage. Years of work, ruined. I had my suspicions about who did it, but I needed proof. I rushed inside to my laptop. I'd installed security cameras around my property a few years ago after some break-ins in the neighborhood. My family didn't know about them. I pulled up the footage from earlier that day and there they were, Marcus and Sarah, clear as day. The video showed them systematically destroying my garden, Sarah laughing as she pulled up my prize-winning roses. I uploaded the video to my phone and drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't call first. I just walked right in. The whole family was there, my parents, Marcus, Sarah, and the kids. My mother looked up in surprise. "Aurora, what are you doing here?" I could see Sarah trying not to smile, she was enjoying my anger. "Someone destroyed my garden today," I said calmly. Sarah shrugged with fake innocence. "Oh no, that's terrible. There are so many troublemakers around these days." "Yes, there are," I agreed, "that's why I'm going to the police to find these criminals. Especially since I have it all on video." I held up my phone and played the footage. You could clearly see Marcus and Sarah's faces as they destroyed my property. The color drained out of both their faces. My parents stared at the screen in shock. "I'm going to sue you both," I said. "And I'm posting this video on social media so everyone can see what kind of people my relatives really are." "Aurora, please," my mother begged, "don't do this to the family." "Don't do what?" "Don't seek justice for my destroyed property? Don't show people the truth about what they did?" Marcus finally spoke up. "Aurora, we can work this out. Don't involve the police." You have exactly 1 week to pay me $3,000 for the damage, I said. If you don't, I'm filing charges and posting this video everywhere. Everyone will know what you did. $3,000, Sarah gasped. We don't have that kind of money. Then you better find it. You had money to terminate your lease and hire movers, figure it out. I walked out without another word. Exactly 7 days later, I received a bank transfer for $3,000 from Marcus, along with a text message, "We never want to see you again." I actually laughed, like I wanted to see them either. It's been a couple months since all this happened. I used the money to restore my garden, and it's more beautiful than ever. My business is thriving, I'm making good money, and I finally have peace in my life. I heard through mutual friends that Marcus and his family moved in with my parents. Apparently they're all miserable, complaining about how cramped it is with 6 people in a 3-bedroom house. My parents are constantly stressed about the extra expenses, and Sarah is driving everyone crazy with her demands. But honestly, I don't care anymore. Sometimes I sit in my garden in the evening, watching the sunset and listening to the birds. I think about how different things could have been if my family had just been happy for me, if they'd celebrated my success instead of trying to take it away. But then I realize I'm better off without them. I'd rather be alone in my beautiful house than surrounded by people who only see me as a source of money and free stuff.